He thought buying an abandoned cathedral for $950 would save his family. But what Marcus found buried beneath those ancient stone floors was a secret so valuable, so dangerous, it would either destroy them or change their lives forever. Before we dive into the story, make sure to smash subscribe, because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The morning sun barely broke through the clouds over Pine Ridge, casting everything in shades of grey that matched how Marcus felt most days. He sat in his 15-year-old Honda Civic outside the county courthouse, engine ticking as it cooled, staring at a crumpled piece of paper in his calloused hands. His fingers were stained with dried concrete dust from the construction site. Under his nails, dirt that no amount of scrubbing ever seemed to remove. He was 42 years old, but felt 60. The paper was an auction listing. He'd torn it from the bulletin board at the courthouse 3 days ago, and every night since, he'd pulled it out and read it again, like maybe the words would change. Like maybe it would suddenly make sense. Estate auction, Lot 47, abandoned cathedral house, circa 1873, 5.2 acres. Condemned structure, sold as is. No utilities, no warranty. Starting bid $800. $800. Marcus had been broke before. He'd known struggle. But the past 2 years since Sarah died had redefined what empty meant. Empty bank account, empty bed, empty seat at the dinner table. Raising 2 kids alone on a construction worker's salary and whatever hours he could pick up doing overnight security wasn't living. It was surviving barely. His daughter Emma was 12 now, growing up too fast, asking questions he didn't have answers for. His son Tyler was 8, still young enough to believe Daddy could fix anything, even though Marcus knew he was failing them both. They lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that smelled like mildew and someone else's cigarette smoke. The landlord had taped a 72-hour notice to the door last week. Marcus folded the paper and tucked it back into his shirt pocket, right over his heart, where it had lived for 3 days. He stepped out of the car. His boots hit the pavement with the weight of a man carrying more than anyone could see. Inside the courthouse, the auction room was smaller than he expected. Maybe 20 metal folding chairs facing a podium where a bored-looking clerk shuffled papers. Only a handful of people had shown up. Most looked like professional flippers, guys with clipboards and Bluetooth earpieces who did this every week. They barely glanced at Marcus when he walked in. His jeans were ripped at the knee, his jacket frayed at the cuffs. He didn't look like someone with money to spend. He sat in the back row, hands folded, watching. The auctioneer moved through lots quickly. A foreclosed duplex went for $38,000. A strip mall property went for $215,000. Marcus watched the flippers raise their paddles with the casualty of men ordering coffee. This was business. This was normal. Then Lot 47 came up. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Abandoned cathedral structure on Bell Mountain Road, 5.2 acres, built 1873, stone construction. Property condemned by county, sold as is, no inspection available. We got $800 to start. Silence. Marcus looked around. No one moved. The flippers were looking at their phones or whispering to each other. One guy actually laughed. Anyone? 800 to open? More silence. Marcus felt his heart start to hammer. He didn't understand. 5 acres of land alone should be worth something. Even if the building was a total loss, the land had to have value. Why wasn't anyone bidding? "All right," the auctioneer sighed. "Anyone at all?" Marcus raised his hand. It felt like lifting 100 pounds. The auctioneer looked surprised. "We got 800. Anyone else?" Nothing. 850? A long pause. Going once at 800. Marcus held his breath. Going twice. Please don't let anyone else bid. Please. Sold for $800 to bidder 73. Marcus exhaled so hard he felt dizzy. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. He walked to the front on shaking legs and signed papers he barely read. The clerk took his credit card, the one he'd been saving for absolute emergencies, and ran it for $950 total with fees. "You know that property's got a reputation, right?" the clerk said, handing him the deed. "What kind of reputation?" The clerk shrugged. "Folks say it's cursed. Been abandoned since the 1960s. Every time someone tries to do something with it, something bad happens. Just what I heard." Marcus took the deed and folded it carefully. "I don't believe in curses." "Yeah," the clerk said. "That's what the last guy said too." Marcus drove home with the deed on the passenger seat, the weight of what he'd done settling over him like a blanket. He'd just spent almost $1,000 they didn't have on a property he'd never seen. Sarah would have killed him. Or maybe she would have understood. She always believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. Before Sarah got sick, back when she was still healthy and their lives made sense, Marcus had been an architect. Not a famous one, just a guy who designed small commercial buildings and residential additions. He'd loved it. Loved the precision, the creativity, the way a building could tell a story if you built it right. But when Sarah's cancer came back the second time, everything changed. The long hospital stays, the bills, the nights sitting by her bed watching her disappear piece by piece. He'd burned through their savings, maxed out cards, borrowed from family. And when she finally passed, he'd been so deep in debt and so shattered that going back to architecture felt impossible. The firm he'd worked for had moved on without him. So he took whatever work he could get: construction, security, anything that paid. Now he was 42 with rough hands and a breaking back, and his kids deserved better. The apartment was quiet when he got home. Emma was at school. Tyler was at after-school care, the free program at the community center. Marcus had 2 hours before he had to pick them up. He sat at the kitchen table and spread out the paperwork. The deed showed a property map. Bell Mountain Road was about 30 miles outside of town, way up in the hills where nobody really lived anymore. The map showed the cathedral structure, a large rectangle, and the 5 acres surrounding it. There was a note at the bottom in small print: "Structure deemed unsafe. Entry at own risk." Marcus pulled out his laptop, the old one with the cracked screen that took 5 minutes to boot up, and Googled the address. Nothing came up. He tried the property records. The last recorded owner was something called the Diocese of St. Augustine, and the last transaction was in 1968, almost 60 years ago. He tried searching Cathedral, Bell Mountain Road, and finally found something. A local history blog post from 2009. The Cathedral of the Pines was built in 1873 by Father Patrick Sullivan, an Irish priest who came to America with a vision of creating a spiritual retreat in the mountains. The cathedral was built entirely of local stone by hand and featured Gothic revival architecture rare for this region. It served as a monastery and sanctuary until 1967, when the diocese abruptly closed it. Reasons for the closure remain unclear, though local legend suggests everything from financial troubles to supernatural occurrences. The property has sat abandoned ever since, slowly consumed by forest and time. Marcus stared at the screen. A monastery. He'd bought a monastery. He kept reading through old blog posts and local forum discussions. People shared stories about the cathedral. Teenagers who'd snuck in on dares and claimed to hear voices. Photographers who'd tried to explore it and had their equipment malfunction. One post from 2012 said, "Tried to buy that property once. Inspector wouldn't even go inside. Said something felt wrong. Walked away from the whole deal." Marcus closed the laptop. He didn't care about ghost stories or superstitions. He cared about square footage and whether the roof had completely caved in. That evening, after he picked up the kids and made them dinner, boxed macaroni and frozen chicken nuggets stretched with canned green beans, he sat them down at the table. Emma looked up from her homework, suspicious. She'd developed a radar for bad news over the past 2 years. Every time Marcus said, "We need to talk," it meant something was changing, and change was never good. "What's wrong?" she asked. Nothing's wrong, Marcus said. Actually, something might be right for once. Tyler perked up. He still had that 8-year-old optimism that hadn't been completely crushed yet. Are we getting a dog? Not a dog, Marcus said, but I bought us a house. Emma's eyes went wide. What? How? At an auction. It needs work, a lot of work, but it's ours. No more rent, no more landlord. 5 acres of land. And the building is big enough we'll all have our own rooms. What kind of house? Emma asked. Her skepticism was written all over her face. Marcus hesitated. It's actually an old cathedral, like a church building, but we can convert it. I used to be an architect, remember? I know how to make it work. Emma stared at him. You bought a church? An abandoned cathedral, technically. Dad, Emma said slowly, like she was talking to a child. Why was it abandoned? The diocese closed it in the 60s. It's been empty since then. That's like 60 years ago, Emma said. Doesn't that seem weird to you? Tyler tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Is it haunted? No, Marcus said firmly. It's not haunted. It's just old and needs fixing up. That's why it was so cheap. How cheap? Emma asked. $950. Emma's mouth fell open. Dad, nothing costs $950. What's wrong with it? It needs repairs, Marcus admitted. But the bones are good. Stone construction, 5 acres. We can make it beautiful. Emma looked at him for a long time, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that hurt. She didn't believe him. She didn't trust that he could pull this off. And why would she? For 2 years, everything had been falling apart, but he was determined to prove her wrong. When can we see it? Tyler asked. This weekend, Marcus said. Saturday morning, we'll drive out and take a look. That night, after the kids went to bed, Emma in her room and Tyler on the couch because the second bedroom was too small for 2 beds, Marcus sat alone in the dark. He pulled out his phone and looked at photos of Sarah, her smile, the way she used to look at him like he was capable of anything. He whispered to the screen, I'm trying, baby. I'm really trying. Saturday morning arrived cold and grey, the kind of October day that promised winter was coming whether you were ready or not. Marcus loaded the kids into the Civic along with a bag of tools, flashlights and sandwiches he'd made the night before. The drive took 45 minutes, winding up narrow mountain roads that hadn't seen maintenance in years. Pine trees crowded both sides, their branches forming a tunnel overhead. This is creepy, Emma muttered from the back seat. It's atmospheric, Marcus corrected. That's different. Tyler pressed his face against the window. I don't see any houses. That's because we're going somewhere remote, private. That's a good thing. Finally, they turned onto Bell Mountain Road. The pavement gave way to gravel, then dirt. The road curved through dense forest, and then suddenly the trees opened up. Marcus stopped the car. Ahead of them, rising from a clearing choked with weeds and wild vines, stood the cathedral. It was massive, bigger than Marcus had imagined. The stone walls were dark grey, almost black, weathered by decades of rain and snow. The structure was Gothic revival with pointed arch windows that had long since lost their glass. A bell tower rose from the centre, its copper roof green with patina. The main entrance featured heavy wooden doors carved with intricate patterns, hanging crooked on ancient hinges. Whoa! Tyler breathed. Emma said nothing, just stared. Marcus got out of the car slowly. The air smelled like pine needles and damp stone. It was absolutely silent, except for the wind moving through the trees. No traffic sounds, no neighbors, no signs of civilization at all. He walked toward the cathedral, his boots crunching on gravel and dead leaves. The kids followed close behind, Tyler gripping the back of Marcus's jacket. Up close, the building was even more impressive. The stonework was incredible, each block cut and fitted by hand. The pointed arch doorway stood at least 12 feet tall. Marcus ran his hand along the stone, feeling the texture, the weight of history. Someone built this with their hands, he said quietly. Every stone, every arch. No machines, no modern tools, just faith and determination. And then they left it to rot, Emma said. Why would they do that? I don't know, Marcus admitted, but we're going to bring it back. He tried the main door. It was locked, but the wood was so old and warped that one good shove broke the lock. The door groaned open, revealing darkness inside. Marcus clicked on his flashlight and stepped through. The interior took his breath away. They were standing in what must have been the main sanctuary. The ceiling soared 40 feet overhead, supported by stone arches. The floor was made of large slate tiles, many cracked but intact. Rows of wooden pews still stood in neat lines, covered in dust and bird droppings. At the far end, a stone altar rose on a platform. Behind it, the remains of a massive stained glass window. Most of the glass gone, but the iron framework still in place. Light filtered through the broken windows in shafts, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. The acoustics were incredible. Every footstep echoed. "This is amazing," Marcus whispered, and his voice carried through the space like he was standing in a concert hall. Tyler ventured forward cautiously. "It's like a castle." Emma walked slowly down the center aisle, looking up at the vaulted ceiling. Despite her skepticism, Marcus saw wonder in her face. She stopped at the altar and turned back to look at them. "Dad!" she called out, her voice echoing. "This is actually kind of cool." Marcus grinned. Small victory. They spent the next hour exploring. Marcus made notes on his phone, documenting everything. The roof had holes, but the main structure was intact. The stone walls were solid. There was evidence of water damage, but no major structural failure. Several side rooms branched off the main sanctuary, small chapels or offices, some with doors still attached. In what must have been the vestry, they found old furniture, a desk, chairs, filing cabinets, all covered in decades of dust. Marcus opened one drawer and found papers, but they were too damaged by moisture to read. "Look at this," Emma called from another room. Marcus and Tyler joined her in what appeared to be a small library. Built-in bookshelves lined the walls, and amazingly, some books were still there. Marcus pulled one out carefully. It was a Bible, printed in 1892 according to the title page. The leather cover was mildewed, but the pages were intact. "People really lived here," Tyler said, awe in his voice. "Yeah," Marcus said. "Monks, probably. This was their whole world." As they explored further, Marcus noticed something odd. Throughout the building, there were signs that someone had been maintaining things, at least partially. Some windows had been recently boarded up, the wood fresh compared to everything else. A few doors had new padlocks on them, though most had been broken or removed. In one room, he found relatively fresh footprints in the dust. "Someone's been here," Emma said, noticing the same thing. "Probably kids," Marcus said. "Urban explorers, photographers. Places like this attract people." But something about it felt off. The maintenance was too deliberate, too careful. This wasn't vandals or teenagers. Someone had been taking care of this place, at least minimally. But why? And where were they now? They made their way back to the main sanctuary. Marcus stood in the center, turning slowly, taking it all in. With work, with vision, this could be incredible. The main sanctuary alone was large enough to divide into multiple rooms. They could build a second floor in the side chapels, install proper windows, running water, electricity. It would take time and money he didn't have, but the potential was here. "So what do you think?" he asked the kids. Tyler was running between the pews, his footsteps echoing off stone. "I think it's awesome. Can my room be in the tower?" Emma walked up to Marcus and looked at him seriously. "Dad, I think it's cool. I do. But how are we going to pay to fix all this?" "One step at a time," Marcus said. "I'll do most of the work myself. We'll start with making a few rooms livable, then expand from there." "And we'll live here while you're fixing it?" "Eventually, yeah." She bit her lip, looking around. "It doesn't scare you? That it's been empty for so long?" That nobody else wanted it? Marcus put his hand on her shoulder. What scares me is losing our apartment and not having anywhere to go. This is a chance, Emma. Maybe the only one we're going to get. She nodded slowly. Okay, but if it is haunted, I'm telling you, I called it. Marcus laughed. Deal. They ate their sandwiches sitting on the front steps of the cathedral, looking out over the clearing. Beyond the weeds, Marcus could see the property extended down a gentle slope toward a creek. In spring, this would be beautiful. Maybe they could clear some of the brush, plant a garden. Tyler could run and play without Marcus worrying about traffic or strangers. After lunch, Marcus wanted to do one more sweep of the building before they left. He told the kids to wait outside, play in the clearing, but stay where he could see them from the windows. He went back inside alone, flashlight in hand, and started checking the side rooms more carefully. He was looking for any sign of major structural damage, foundation issues, anything that would make this project impossible. In the back corner of the sanctuary, behind where the altar stood, he found a narrow doorway he'd missed earlier. It was partially hidden by a heavy tapestry that had rotted and fallen. The door itself was small, maybe 5 feet tall, made of dark wood with iron bands. Marcus tried the handle, locked. He examined the lock. It was old, maybe original to the building, a simple keyhole. He pulled out his multi-tool and worked at it for several minutes. Finally, something clicked. The door swung inward with a groan. Beyond was a narrow stone staircase spiraling down into darkness. Marcus's heart started beating faster. He called out, "Emma! Tyler! Stay outside! I'm checking something!" He heard Tyler yell back, "Okay, Dad!" Marcus descended carefully. The stairs were worn smooth in the center from centuries of feet walking up and down. The air grew colder with each step. His flashlight beam cut through absolute darkness. After maybe 20 steps, the staircase opened into a small chamber. Marcus swept his light around. The walls were stone, carved with symbols he didn't recognize. Religious imagery, crosses, but also other things. Geometric patterns, what looked like Latin inscriptions. But what caught his attention was the floor. In the center of the chamber, set into the stone floor, was another door. Not a regular door, but a hatch, maybe 4 feet square, made of what looked like bronze or brass. It was covered in more intricate carvings, and in the center was a large circular seal. Marcus knelt beside it. His hands were shaking. The seal depicted what looked like a cathedral or church, surrounded by radiating lines. Beneath it were words in Latin. He pulled out his phone and took a photo, hoping he could translate it later. He tried to lift the hatch. It didn't budge. He examined the edges, looking for a lock or mechanism, but couldn't find anything obvious. The seal in the center looked like it might rotate, but when he tried to turn it, nothing happened. Marcus sat back on his heels, his mind racing. What was this? A crypt? Storage? Why would monks seal something this carefully? He took more photos, documenting everything. Then he climbed back up the stairs, his thoughts spinning. He locked the small door behind him and let the rotted tapestry fall back in front of it. When he emerged into the main sanctuary, the afternoon sun was streaming through the broken windows at a different angle. He'd been down there longer than he thought. He walked outside where the kids were throwing pine cones at trees. "Ready to go home?" he called. "Already?" Tyler whined. "We'll come back next weekend," Marcus promised. "Bring more tools. Start planning." On the drive home, the kids chatted about which rooms they wanted and how cool it would be to live in a castle. Marcus participated in the conversation, but his mind was elsewhere. What was beneath that hatch? Why seal it so carefully? And why did he feel like he'd just opened a door to something that had been waiting a very long time to be found? That night, after the kids were asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his laptop. He'd uploaded the photos from his phone and was staring at the image of the bronze hatch. He zoomed in on the Latin words beneath the seal. Using Google Translate and online Latin dictionaries, he slowly pieced together the meaning. Quod absconditum est pretiosius quam aurum. What is hidden is more precious than gold. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his pulse quickening. It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. He looked at the other photos, studying every detail of the carvings on the hatch. They weren't random. They were telling a story, symbols he didn't understand, but which clearly meant something. What had the monks hidden? And more importantly, why? He thought about the clerk's warning at the courthouse, about the local legends of the place being cursed, about the fact that no one else had bid on the property, about the fresh locks and signs of recent maintenance. Someone knew something. Marcus closed his laptop and stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. In his pocket, his hand closed around the deed to the cathedral. He'd bought the building hoping to save his family. But standing there in the quiet apartment, with his kids sleeping and the weight of an unknown future pressing down on him, Marcus realized he'd purchased more than just property. He'd bought a mystery, and he was going to solve it, whether he was ready for what he found or not. Because beneath that sealed hatch, something waited. Something precious, something hidden, something that might change everything. And Marcus knew with absolute certainty that his life was about to become far more complicated than simply renovating an old cathedral. The real question was whether he'd survive what came next. Marcus spent the next 3 days thinking about that hatch. At the construction site, mixing concrete and hauling rebar, his mind was underground in that stone chamber. During his overnight security shift at the warehouse, walking empty halls with a flashlight, he kept seeing those bronze carvings in his mind. What is hidden is more precious than gold. On Wednesday night, after he'd tucked the kids into bed and the apartment had fallen quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic, Marcus sat at the kitchen table and made a decision. He needed to open that hatch. He needed to see what was down there. Not knowing was eating him alive, but he couldn't bring the kids, not until he knew what he was dealing with. Thursday morning, he called his sister Rachel. She lived 2 hours north in Cooper Falls, worked as a dental hygienist, had a spare bedroom and a golden retriever the kids loved. He hadn't asked her for help since Sarah's funeral, but he was asking now. "I need a favor," he said. "Can Emma and Tyler stay with you this weekend? Just Saturday and Sunday?" "Of course," Rachel said immediately. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, I just need to do some work on the new property. Heavy lifting, power tools, not safe for them to be around." "Marcus, you bought a property. When did this happen?" "Last week. It's a fixer-upper. I'll tell you all about it when I drop them off." Friday after school, Marcus loaded the kids and their backpacks into the Civic. Emma was suspicious immediately. She'd developed a sixth sense for when he wasn't telling her everything. "Why can't we come to the cathedral?" she asked as they drove north. "Because I'm going to be using equipment that's dangerous. Angle grinders, probably a jackhammer. I don't want either of you getting hurt." "You're lying," she said flatly. Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Excuse me?" "Not lying, but not telling us everything. You found something, didn't you, at the cathedral?" "Emma, I saw your face when we left last weekend. You looked like you saw a ghost, and you've been weird all week, distracted. So what is it?" Marcus gripped the steering wheel. His daughter was too smart for her own good. "I found a sealed door," he admitted, "underground. I don't know what's behind it, but I need to open it carefully. Alone, that's all." "What if it's dangerous?" "It's not dangerous, it's just old. Probably just storage or an old crypt." "A crypt with dead people?" "Probably empty by now," Marcus said, though he didn't actually believe that. Tyler, who'd been staring out the window, piped up. "Maybe it's treasure, like in Indiana Jones." Marcus smiled despite himself. "Maybe, buddy. Maybe." When they got to Rachel's house, She took one look at Marcus and pulled him aside while the kids played with the dog in the backyard. "You look terrible," she said. "When's the last time you slept?" "I sleep." "Marcus, I'm serious. You're running yourself into the ground. Sarah would want—" "Don't," Marcus interrupted. "Please don't tell me what Sarah would want. I know what she'd want. She'd want me to take care of our kids, and that's what I'm doing." Rachel softened. "I know you are. I just worry about you." "I'm okay. This property, Rachel, it could be something. It could be our way out." "Out of what?" "Out of barely surviving. The kids deserve better than a moldy apartment and a dad who's too exhausted to help with homework. If I can make this cathedral work, flip it or convert it, we could have something real, stability." Rachel hugged him. "Okay, you do what you need to do. The kids are safe here." Marcus hugged her back, holding on a second longer than necessary. "Thank you." Saturday morning, Marcus was back at the cathedral by 6 a.m. He'd barely slept, running on coffee and adrenaline. The Civic's trunk was loaded with tools he'd borrowed from the construction site: crowbars, sledgehammer, drill with masonry bits, work lights, rope, even a small generator. The cathedral looked different in the early morning mist, more mysterious, more ancient. He unlocked the main door and stepped inside. The sanctuary was cold, his breath visible in the dim light filtering through broken windows. He went straight to the back corner, pulled aside the rotted tapestry, and unlocked the small door. The spiral staircase descended into darkness. He'd brought better flashlights this time, heavy-duty LED ones, and he'd rigged up a work light connected to an extension cord running back to the generator outside. The stone chamber at the bottom looked exactly as he'd left it. The bronze hatch in the floor gleamed dully under his flashlight. Marcus set up the work light, and the whole space illuminated. He could see the carvings more clearly now. The detail was incredible. Whoever made this had been a master craftsman. He knelt beside the hatch and examined every inch of it. There had to be a mechanism, a way to open it. The seal in the center was definitely the key. He tried rotating it clockwise. Nothing. Counterclockwise. Nothing. He tried pushing it. Nothing. Then he noticed something. The carved cathedral in the center of the seal. It had tiny indentations at specific points. He counted them. 7. They weren't random damage. They were deliberate. He pressed each one in sequence, starting from the top and working clockwise. On the 7th press, something clicked deep inside the hatch. The seal rotated slightly on its own. Marcus held his breath and turned the seal. It moved smoothly now, rotating a full 360 degrees. When it stopped, there was a deep metallic clunk from beneath the floor. The hatch rose an inch. Marcus grabbed the edge and pulled. It was incredibly heavy. Solid bronze, probably weighing 200 pounds, but it moved. He hauled it open, muscles straining until it stood vertical. Beyond was another staircase, much steeper than the first, descending into absolute darkness. Cold air rushed up from below, making Marcus shiver. It didn't smell musty or damp. It smelled dry, preserved, like a sealed tomb. He grabbed his flashlight and started down. The stairs were carved directly into bedrock, narrow and treacherous. Marcus counted as he went. 20 steps. 30. 40. The temperature dropped with each step. His flashlight beam couldn't find the bottom. At 67 steps, he reached the floor. Marcus swept his light around and his jaw dropped. He was standing in a massive underground chamber, easily 50 feet across and 20 feet high. The ceiling was vaulted stone supported by columns. The walls were lined with alcoves and shelves, and every surface was covered with objects. He stepped forward slowly, light moving from one item to the next, unable to process what he was seeing. Golden candlesticks taller than he was. Ornate crosses studded with jewels. Chalices that gleamed even under centuries of tarnish. Paintings in gilded frames, statues of saints carved from marble, tapestries folded carefully on stone shelves, manuscripts. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, protected in what looked like wax paper or oilcloth. Marcus moved deeper into the chamber, his footsteps echoing. Side passages branched off the main room. He took the first one and found himself in another chamber, smaller but equally packed. More religious artifacts, boxes stacked carefully, each labeled in faded ink he couldn't read. Some labels said Prague, others said Warsaw or Vienna or Munich. His hands started shaking. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it. This wasn't just hidden treasure. This was history. This was culture, religion, art. Things that should be in museums or cathedrals, not buried under a forgotten mountain. He returned to the main chamber and spotted something on a wooden desk in the corner. He approached carefully. The desk held books, ledgers, and papers weighted down by stones. He picked up the top book and opened it carefully. A journal, handwritten in English, thank God. The first page read, Record of Father Benedict Thompson, 1943 through 1956. Marcus sank into the wooden chair behind the desk, hands trembling as he read. March 14, 1943. The war grows worse each day. News from Europe is devastating. The Nazis systematically destroy everything in their path. Churches burned, monasteries looted, precious artifacts lost forever. Brother Wilhelm has smuggled letters to me describing horrors I can barely comprehend. Priceless treasures thrown into fires, manuscripts centuries old used as kindling, golden artifacts melted down for the war machine. They are erasing history itself. I have made a decision. It may cost me everything, but I cannot stand idle. Through my contacts in the church network, I will save what I can. Artifacts, manuscripts, relics, anything precious that can be smuggled out. I will bring them here to St. Augustine's Cathedral and hide them, protect them, until the war ends and they can be returned to their rightful places. Marcus flipped forward several pages. December 2nd, 1943. The first shipment arrived tonight. 3 crates from a monastery outside Prague. Brother Wilhelm died getting them out. The Nazis discovered what he was doing. I said a mass for his soul while unpacking candlesticks 700 years old. They survived the Nazis. They will survive here until the war ends. More pages. June 6th, 1944. D-Day. Perhaps hope. Meanwhile, more treasures arrive. Paintings from destroyed churches in France, a manuscript from the 1400s, a reliquary containing what is supposedly a fragment of the true cross. I don't know if any of these attributions are accurate, but I know they are precious to someone. That is enough. Marcus kept reading, page after page. Father Benedict spent over a decade collecting these artifacts. He worked with a network of priests, monks, and sympathizers across Europe. As the war ended, he continued, saving items from Soviet occupation, from post-war chaos, from dealers who would sell to the highest bidder regardless of the item's significance. Then the entries changed tone. April 21st, 1955. I am dying. The doctors say cancer, but I say it is the weight of secrets. I have protected these treasures for 12 years, over 500 artifacts from 47 locations. The combined value is incalculable, but the historical and spiritual value is beyond measure. I should return them, inform the Vatican, arrange for proper distribution. But I am afraid of politics, of greed, of those who see dollar signs instead of souls. What if I give them to the church and they disappear into private collections? What if the institutions I return them to are corrupt? I have spent my life protecting these objects. I cannot bear the thought of them being misused. The final entry was dated August 3rd, 1956. I am out of time. My health fails rapidly. I have made arrangements for the cathedral to be closed after my death. I told the diocese it is financially unviable, which is true. They do not know about the chamber below. I have sealed it with mechanisms only someone persistent and worthy might open. Let God decide who finds this. Let him guide the right person here. Whoever you are, reading this, you face an impossible choice. These artifacts belong to churches, museums, nations across Europe. But can you trust them to do right? Or will greed and politics consume what I died protecting? I cannot answer for you. I can only tell you this. These objects are precious not because of gold or jewels, but because they represent faith, artistry, human devotion across centuries. Treat them with the reverence they deserve. Signed, Father Benedict Thompson. May God forgive me. Marcus closed the journal carefully. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold it. He sat in that underground chamber, surrounded by $275 million worth of artifacts, and tried to breathe. A priest had died protecting these things, had spent over a decade smuggling them out of war-torn Europe, had hidden them here in a cathedral in the mountains of Pennsylvania and taken the secret to his grave. And now, 68 years later, Marcus had stumbled into it. He stood up and walked through the chambers again, this time really looking. He photographed everything. Golden crosses that must weigh 50 pounds each, paintings by artists whose names he recognized from Sarah's art history books, manuscripts in Latin, German, Italian, Polish, chalices encrusted with precious stones, silk vestments embroidered with gold thread, marble statues of the Virgin Mary and various saints. One alcove held nothing but books, illuminated manuscripts, their pages decorated with intricate illustrations in gold leaf. Marcus carefully opened one dated 1379. The craftsmanship was breathtaking, every letter perfectly formed, every illustration a tiny masterpiece. Another chamber held what looked like architectural elements, carved wooden panels, probably from destroyed altarpieces, stone gargoyles, pieces of elaborate metalwork. Father Benedict had saved everything he could. Marcus spent 4 hours documenting it all. He took over 300 photos. He made notes about where items were located. He found Father Benedict's cataloging system, each artifact labeled with an origin date and a brief description. The priest had been meticulous. Finally, exhausted and overwhelmed, Marcus climbed back up the 67 steps. His legs were shaking. His mind was racing. He sealed the bronze hatch behind him, making sure the mechanism locked. Then he climbed the spiral staircase back to the sanctuary. The afternoon sun streaming through the broken windows felt surreal after hours in the darkness below. Marcus sat on one of the old pews and put his head in his hands. What the hell was he supposed to do? Call the police? Call the church? This wasn't like finding a box of cash. This was history. This was sacred art. These objects had been stolen, sort of, by a well-meaning priest who'd been trying to save them. But they still belonged to someone, dozens of someones, churches and museums and maybe even countries. But Father Benedict's warning echoed in his mind. Afraid of greed, of politics, of those who see dollar signs instead of souls. If Marcus reported this, what would happen? Would these artifacts end up where they belonged? Or would they disappear into private collections or government warehouses? And more practically, what about him? What about Emma and Tyler? If these artifacts were worth $275 million, even a small finder's fee would change their lives. They could have a real home, college funds, security. He could stop working himself to death, give his kids the life Sarah wanted for them. Marcus sat there until the sun started to set, wrestling with impossible questions. Finally, he locked up the cathedral and drove home. He needed time to think. He needed to figure this out. But time was something he didn't have. Monday morning at the construction site, Marcus was operating a concrete mixer when one of the laborers approached him during break. "Hey, you're the guy who bought that old cathedral, right?" Marcus looked up. The laborer was young, maybe 25, tattoos on his forearms. "Yeah, why?" "My uncle was asking about it, said he's a historian or something, studies old buildings, wants to know if you'd let him take a look around." Every muscle in Marcus's body tensed. "Your uncle?" "Yeah, he heard about the sale at the courthouse, got excited about the architecture or whatever. I got his number if you want it. Marcus forced himself to stay calm. Sure, yeah, give it to me. The laborer scribbled a number on a scrap of paper. Name's Dr. Richard Cole, teaches at the university. Marcus took the paper and tucked it in his pocket, heart pounding. This could be innocent, just an architectural historian interested in a Gothic revival building. But the timing felt wrong. 1 week after Marcus bought the place, suddenly someone's asking questions. At lunch, Marcus sat in his car and Googled Dr. Richard Cole. He found a faculty page at the State University, Department of History. The photo showed a man in his 50s with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses. His specialization was listed as European Religious History and Art Preservation. Marcus stared at that last phrase, art preservation. His hands went cold. He scrolled through Cole's published papers. Most were about medieval religious artifacts. One caught his eye. Displaced sacred treasures, tracking lost artifacts from World War II. Marcus closed the browser and sat very still. This wasn't coincidence. Somehow, some way, people knew about the cathedral. Maybe not what was hidden there, but enough to be asking questions, which meant Father Benedict's secret wasn't as secret as he'd thought. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about that phone number in his pocket. Should he call? Should he ignore it? What if he was being paranoid and this really was just an innocent historian? At 2 a.m., he gave up on sleep and opened his laptop. He logged into the security system he'd installed at the cathedral after the first visit. Just a basic motion-activated camera aimed at the front door, running on a battery pack. He hadn't checked the footage in days. He pulled up the recordings and his blood ran cold. There were 4 separate timestamps showing activity. 3 a.m. on Sunday night, someone in a dark jacket and baseball cap had approached the front door with a flashlight. They'd tried the handle, found it locked, then walked around the building. The camera lost sight of them. Tuesday afternoon, a silver sedan had parked at the edge of the clearing. A man got out, the same one from Sunday night based on the jacket. He'd walked around the cathedral, taking photos with his phone. Thursday morning, the same man was back. This time, he'd tried to pry open one of the boarded windows. Marcus felt sick. Someone was actively trying to get into the cathedral. Someone who came at night, who dressed to avoid recognition. What happens next will turn this night upside down, reveal a truth nobody expected, and remind us why sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Marcus screenshotted all the images and saved them to his phone. Then he did something that felt insane but necessary. He packed a bag with clothes, tools, and the handgun he'd bought after Sarah died, the one he kept locked in a safe and hoped never to use. He drove to the cathedral. If someone was trying to break in, he needed to be there. He needed to protect what he'd found. The cathedral was dark and silent when he arrived at 4 a.m. Marcus let himself in and did a complete sweep of the building with his flashlight. Nothing disturbed. He checked the hidden door behind the tapestry, still locked. He went down and checked the bronze hatch, still sealed. Whoever was trying to get in hadn't succeeded yet, but they were persistent, which meant Marcus needed to make a decision fast. Report the break-in attempts to the police. That would mean explaining why someone might want to break into an abandoned cathedral, which would lead to questions, which would lead to the discovery of the hidden chamber, or stay quiet and hope they gave up. Marcus spent the rest of the night sitting in the sanctuary, back against the stone altar, watching the door. As dawn broke and pale light filtered through the broken windows, he made a decision. He needed help, but not from the police or the church. He needed someone he could trust absolutely. He pulled out his phone and called Rachel. She answered on the 3rd ring, voice thick with sleep. "Marcus, it's 6 a.m. What's wrong?" "I need you to keep the kids a few more days." "Why? What happened?" Marcus took a deep breath. I can't explain everything right now, but I found something at the cathedral. Something important. And I think people are looking for it. Bad people. I need to figure out what to do before I bring Emma and Tyler back." Silence on the other end. Then Rachel's voice, sharp and alert. "Marcus, are you in danger?" "I don't think so. Not yet. I just need time." "This is insane. Whatever you found, just turn it over to the authorities." "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is. Marcus, think about your kids. They've already lost their mum. They can't lose you, too." Marcus closed his eyes. "That's exactly why I'm doing this. This could change everything for them, Rachel. Everything. I just need you to trust me." Another long pause. 3 days, Rachel finally said. "Then I'm bringing them home whether you're ready or not." 3 days is enough. Thank you." Marcus ended the call and stood up. His whole body ached from the sleepless night and the tension. He walked to the hidden door and stared at it. Behind that door, down those stairs, beneath that bronze hatch, was enough wealth to solve every problem he had, but also enough trouble to destroy him. Father Benedict had called it an impossible choice. The priest had been right. Marcus spent Monday securing the cathedral. He bought better locks, installed more cameras, boarded up every window that wasn't already sealed. He worked until his hands bled and his back screamed. He slept that night in the sanctuary, wrapped in a sleeping bag on one of the pews, the handgun under his makeshift pillow. Tuesday morning, he was woken by his phone ringing. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Hello?" "Mr. Henry, this is Dr. Richard Cole. I understand you recently purchased the old St. Augustine Cathedral." Marcus sat up fast, instantly alert. "Who gave you my number?" "I teach at the State University. My nephew works on your construction crew. I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I specialize in historical preservation, and I'm very interested in the cathedral's architecture." "It's just an old building," Marcus said carefully. "Oh, I doubt that. St. Augustine's has a fascinating history. Father Benedict Thompson was quite a remarkable man. Did you know he traveled extensively through Europe in the 1940s? There are rumors he was involved in saving artifacts from the war." Marcus's heart stopped. "I don't know anything about that." "Of course not. I'm sure he kept his activities quite secret, but the cathedral itself is architecturally significant. I'd love to see it, perhaps help you understand what you have. No charge, naturally, just academic interest." Every instinct Marcus had screamed this was wrong. "I'm not ready for visitors yet, still assessing structural damage." "I completely understand, but perhaps when you are ready, I have resources that might help with restoration costs, grants, historical preservation funds. It would be a shame to let such a significant building deteriorate further." "I'll think about it," Marcus said. "Thanks for calling." He hung up before Cole could respond. His hands were shaking. The historian knew about Father Benedict's activities, which meant other people probably knew too, which meant the secret chamber might not be secret much longer. Marcus made another decision. He needed documentation that the artifacts were his to protect legally. He drove to the county recorder's office and requested every document related to the cathedral property. Deeds, tax records, transfers, everything. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a chain, brought him a thick folder. "Quite a history on this one," she said. "Diocese transferred it to the county in 1968 for unpaid taxes, sat dormant until your auction." Marcus flipped through the papers. Then he saw something that made his breath catch. A handwritten note attached to the original 1968 transfer. "Property to remain sealed and unused per agreement with Father Benedict Thompson, Estate, Executor, Attorney Joseph Morelli." "What does this mean?" Marcus asked the clerk. She squinted at it. "Looks like there was some kind of stipulation. Probably expired by now. Those usually have time limits." "But it says remain sealed. Sealed from what?" The clerk shrugged. "Could be anything. Structural concerns, environmental issues. You'd have to track down the attorney, but good luck. This is from 56 years ago. He's probably dead." Marcus photocopied everything and left. His mind was reeling. Father Benedict had made legal arrangements to keep the cathedral sealed, to protect his secret even after death. But those protections had expired, and now Marcus owned the building and everything in it, which meant legally the artifacts might be his. But morally? That was a different question entirely. Wednesday morning, Marcus woke to his phone buzzing. Text from an unknown number. "Mr. Henry, I know what you found. We should talk. You're in over your head. Cole." Marcus stared at the message. How did Cole get his cell number, and what exactly did he know? Marcus's hands tightened on the phone. He typed back, "I don't know what you're talking about." The response came immediately. "The chamber beneath the cathedral, the artifacts Father Benedict smuggled from Europe. I've been researching this for 20 years. I can help you navigate what comes next. Or I can make things very difficult. Your choice." Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Cole knew. He knew everything, which meant Marcus had no time left. He had to decide what to do, and he had to decide now. Protect the artifacts and risk everything, or turn them over and hope for the best. He thought about Emma and Tyler, about Sarah, about what she would tell him to do. She'd always been the moral compass, the one who saw right and wrong clearly when Marcus was lost in the grey. And he knew, standing there in the cold sanctuary, exactly what she would say. Do the right thing, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Marcus took a deep breath and made his choice. He wasn't calling Cole. He wasn't turning the artifacts over to someone he didn't trust. But he wasn't keeping them either. There had to be a third option. There had to be a way to honor Father Benedict's sacrifice while protecting these treasures and keeping his family safe. He just had to find it. And he had 3 days before his kids came home. 3 days to figure out how to do the impossible. 3 days before everything changed forever. Marcus didn't sleep Wednesday night. He sat in the sanctuary with his laptop, researching everything he could find about art repatriation, finders' rights, and international law regarding stolen artifacts. The legal landscape was a nightmare. Artifacts taken during World War II existed in a grey area. Some had been formally claimed by governments or institutions. Others had simply disappeared into the chaos of war and never been officially reported missing. Father Benedict's journal mentioned specific churches and monasteries, but Marcus had no way of knowing if those institutions still existed or if they even knew what they'd lost. 79 years was a long time. Records could have been destroyed, buildings bombed, entire congregations scattered. Around 3 a.m., Marcus found a case study that made his stomach turn. In 2007, a man in Austria discovered 14 paintings in his deceased father's attic, paintings stolen by Nazis during the war. The man tried to return them to their rightful owners, but the process took 8 years, cost him over $200,000 in legal fees, and ended with the paintings seized by 3 different governments who all claimed ownership. The man received nothing, not even gratitude. Marcus closed the laptop and rubbed his eyes. He couldn't let that happen. He had to protect these artifacts, but he also had to protect himself and his kids. There had to be someone he could trust, someone with the moral authority and practical knowledge to help him navigate this. Thursday morning, Marcus made a phone call he'd been putting off. He dialed the main number for the Diocese of St. Augustine and asked to speak with the bishop. "Bishop Morrison's office," a woman's voice answered. "This is Patricia. How may I help you?" "My name is Marcus Henry. I recently purchased the old St. Augustine's Cathedral property. I need to speak with the bishop about something I found there." There was a pause. "The cathedral on Bell Mountain Road?" "Yes." "Please hold." The hold music was Gregorian chant. Marcus waited, his heart pounding. After 3 minutes, a different voice came on the line. Male, older, measured. "This is Bishop Morrison. Mr. Henry, Patricia tells me you found something at the old cathedral." "Yes, I need to discuss it in person. It's sensitive." "Can you give me some indication of what this concerns?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "It concerns Father Benedict Thompson and activities he was involved in during the 1940s. Silence on the other end. Then, "I see. Can you come to the diocesan office this afternoon? Say 2 p.m. "I'll be there." Marcus ended the call and sat back. He'd just set something in motion that he couldn't stop. For better or worse, the church now knew he'd found something. The diocesan office was in the city, a modern building attached to the Cathedral of St. Joseph. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early, wearing the cleanest clothes he owned, dark jeans and a button-down shirt he'd ironed for the first time in months. He was shown to a waiting room with uncomfortable chairs and paintings of previous bishops staring down from the walls. At exactly 2 p.m., Patricia led him to Bishop Morrison's office. The bishop was in his late 60s, white hair, kind eyes behind rimless glasses. He stood and offered his hand. "Mr. Henry, please sit. Can I get you coffee or water?" Water would be good. Patricia brought a bottle and left, closing the door behind her. The bishop sat behind his desk, hands folded, waiting. Marcus took a breath. "I bought the St. Augustine Cathedral property at auction 2 weeks ago. While exploring the building, I found a hidden chamber beneath the sanctuary. Inside are hundreds of religious artifacts that Father Benedict Thompson smuggled out of Europe during and after World War II. He kept a detailed journal explaining everything. The artifacts are worth over $275 million. Bishop Morrison's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or concern. He was quiet for a long moment. "You've seen these artifacts yourself?" he finally asked. "Yes, I've photographed and catalogued them. Paintings, manuscripts, reliquaries, chalices, statues, items from churches in Prague, Warsaw, Vienna, Munich, dozens of locations. Father Benedict saved them from Nazi destruction and hid them. He died before he could return them." The bishop stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "Father Benedict was before my time. I've read his file. He was considered eccentric but devoted. The diocese closed St. Augustine's in 1968 due to financial issues. We had no idea about any of this. His journal suggests he didn't trust the church hierarchy to handle the artifacts appropriately." Morrison turned back. "That doesn't surprise me. The church in the 1950s and 60s was complicated. Politics, money, corruption in some dioceses. Father Benedict was an idealist. He probably believed he was protecting these treasures from human weakness." He sat down again. "Mr. Henry, do you understand the position you're in? What you've described is possibly the largest find of displaced religious artifacts since the war. Governments will want them. Museums will claim them. The Vatican itself will get involved." "I know. Then why come to me?" Marcus met his eyes. "Because I need help. I'm a construction worker raising 2 kids alone. I can't navigate this by myself. And because Father Benedict was a priest, these are sacred objects. They should be handled by people who understand what they mean, not just what they're worth." Bishop Morrison studied him for a long moment. "There are people who would simply sell them. Dealers who would pay you millions, no questions asked. Why not do that?" "Because Father Benedict died protecting them. He trusted that whoever found them would do the right thing. I want to honor that trust." The bishop nodded slowly. "Mr. Henry, I'm going to be honest with you. If the diocese officially acknowledges these artifacts exist, we'll be legally required to report them to multiple authorities. Interpol, UNESCO, the Vatican, various European governments. It will trigger an investigation that will consume years of your life. You'll be deposed, audited, probably sued, and at the end of it, you likely won't see a penny." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "So what do I do?" "I don't know," the bishop said simply. "But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to forget we had this conversation. Officially, you never called me. Unofficially, I'm going to give you a name. Father Vincent Torres. He's retired, lives at St. Mary's Monastery, about an hour north of here. He's 91 years old and he was Father Benedict's friend. They served together in the 40s. If anyone can help you understand what Benedict wanted, it's him. Marcus wrote down the name and address. Why are you helping me? Because you came here instead of calling a black market dealer. That tells me you're trying to do right, and because Father Benedict deserves to have his work honored, even if it takes 7 decades. Morrison stood, ending the meeting. One more thing. You mentioned someone named Dr. Richard Cole contacted you. Yes, he seems to know about the artifacts. Morrison's expression darkened. Cole has been trying to access church archives for years. He claims to be a historian, but we believe he works with private collectors. Be very careful with him. He's dangerous. Marcus left the diocesan office with more questions than answers. But he had a name. Father Vincent Torres. Maybe the old priest could help him see a path forward that didn't end in his family's destruction. That night, Marcus drove back to the cathedral. He needed to check the security cameras and make sure no one had tried to break in. As he approached the clearing, his headlights caught something that made him slam on the brakes. There was another car parked in front of the cathedral, a black SUV with tinted windows. Marcus killed his lights and sat in the darkness, watching. The cathedral's front door was open. Someone was inside. He grabbed his phone and pulled up the security camera app. The feed showed 2 figures inside the sanctuary, both wearing dark clothes and carrying flashlights. They were searching the building systematically, moving from room to room. Marcus's hand went to the handgun in his jacket pocket. Every instinct told him to call the police. But if police came, they'd want to know why people were breaking into his property. They'd search the building. They'd find the hidden chamber. He made a decision that was probably stupid but felt necessary. He got out of the car quietly and approached the cathedral on foot, staying in the shadows. He could hear voices inside, male, speaking in low tones. "Basement level behind the altar," one voice said. "The plans show a stairwell." "I don't see any door," another voice replied. "It's hidden. Keep looking." Marcus's blood ran cold. They had plans, architectural plans that showed the hidden stairwell, which meant someone with access to old church records had sent them. Possibly Cole, possibly someone else. He stepped through the front door, gun in his hand, but pointed at the ground. "This is private property. You're trespassing." Both men spun around, flashlights blinding him. Marcus raised his free hand to shield his eyes. "I've called the police. They're on their way." A lie, but worth trying. One of the men laughed. "No, you haven't. You don't want police here any more than we do." The man stepped forward, and Marcus got his first good look at him. Mid-40s, expensive jacket, the look of someone used to getting what he wanted. "Mr. Henry, I presume? I'm David Sullivan. I represent a private collector who's very interested in certain items that may be located on this property." "There's nothing here, just an empty building." "We both know that's not true. Dr. Cole has done extensive research. Father Benedict Thompson smuggled over 500 artifacts from Europe and hid them here. My employer is prepared to offer you $25 million for access to those artifacts." Marcus felt like he'd been gut-punched. $25 million. He could take that money, walk away, never worry about rent or food or his kid's future again. Emma could go to any college she wanted. Tyler could have the childhood Sarah always dreamed of giving him. "No," Marcus heard himself say. Sullivan raised an eyebrow. "No, Mr. Henry, be reasonable. You're a construction worker. This money could change your life." "Those artifacts aren't mine to sell." "Actually, they are. You own the property. Anything found on it belongs to you under finder's law. We've had attorneys review this extensively. They belong to the churches they were taken from. Churches that may not even exist anymore. Churches that have no idea what they lost 75 years ago. Sullivan took another step forward. "Let me be clear. My employer will have those artifacts one way or another. I'm offering you the chance to profit. The alternative is we take them and you get nothing." Marcus raised the gun slightly, not pointing it at anyone, just making sure they saw it. "Get out of my building." Sullivan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're making a mistake. We'll be back, and next time we won't ask permission." The two men walked past Marcus and out the door. He listened to the SUV's engine start and watched taillights disappear down the mountain road. Then his legs gave out and he sat down hard on the stone floor. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Told you you're in over your head." That was Sullivan. "He's connected to some very dangerous people. Call me before this gets worse. Cole." Marcus wanted to throw the phone across the sanctuary. Instead, he forwarded the text to Bishop Morrison with a simple message. "This just happened." The response came within minutes. "Come to St. Mary's Monastery tomorrow morning. Father Vincent will see you at 9 a.m. Don't talk to anyone else." Friday morning, Marcus drove north through rolling hills covered in early frost. St. Mary's Monastery sat on a hilltop surrounded by gardens that must be beautiful in summer, but now looked skeletal and dormant. The main building was old stone, probably built in the early 1900s. A young monk, couldn't be older than 30, answered the door. "Mr. Henry? Father Vincent is expecting you. Please follow me." They walked through quiet halls that smelled like wood polish and old books. The monk led him to a small sitting room where an ancient priest sat in a wheelchair by the window. Father Vincent Torres looked like he was made of paper, skin translucent, hands gnarled with arthritis, but his eyes were sharp and clear. "Thank you, Brother James," Vincent said. His voice was surprisingly strong. "Please close the door." The monk left and Marcus sat in the chair across from the old priest. "Bishop Morrison called me," Vincent said. "Told me you found Benedict's collection." "You knew about it?" "I suspected. Benedict and I served together in the Army Chaplain Corps during the war. I knew he was working with the resistance network, smuggling artifacts out, but I lost track of him after I was transferred to the Pacific Theatre. By the time I came home, Benedict was at St. Augustine's and wouldn't talk about the war. I assumed his artifacts had been returned or lost." Vincent leaned forward slightly. "Tell me everything." Marcus spent 30 minutes describing the hidden chamber, the artifacts, Father Benedict's journal, and the encounters with Cole and Sullivan. Vincent listened without interrupting, his weathered face unreadable. When Marcus finished, the old priest was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. "Benedict was the best man I ever knew. He saw what the Nazis were doing, the systematic destruction of culture and faith, and he couldn't stand by. He risked his life dozens of times to save those treasures. I once asked him why. He said, 'Vincent, when they burn the churches and melt the chalices, they're not just destroying objects. They're trying to erase the story of human devotion. I won't let them.'" Vincent's eyes grew distant. But Benedict was also paranoid. He didn't trust authority, didn't trust institutions. He believed the church had become too political, too focused on money and power. So he hid everything and died with the secret because he couldn't bring himself to trust anyone. "What should I do?" Marcus asked. "Everyone says I'll lose everything if I report this, but I can't just keep quiet either." "No, you can't," Vincent agreed. "Those artifacts aren't yours to keep, but you're right to be cautious about who you trust them to." He reached into his robe and pulled out a worn leather address book. "I'm going to give you names, people I trust, a canon lawyer at the Vatican who specializes in displaced artifacts, a director at Interpol's Stolen Art Division, a journalist who won't sensationalize this. Between them, they can help you navigate what comes next properly." "But what about my family? Sullivan threatened me. Cole is circling. I have 2 kids who need me alive." Vincent's expression softened. Benedict had a phrase he used to say, Do what's right and trust God with the consequences. I know that's not very practical advice for a man with children to protect, but sometimes the right path is the hardest one. Those artifacts represent faith, hope, beauty created during humanity's darkest hours. They deserve to be honored, not sold to the highest bidder or locked in a government warehouse. What happens next will turn this story upside down, reveal a truth nobody expected, and remind us why sometimes doing the right thing requires the most courage. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Marcus left St. Mary's Monastery with 3 names and phone numbers written on a piece of paper. Father Vincent had also given him something else, a silver cross that had belonged to Father Benedict. "He'd want you to have this," Vincent said, "as a reminder that you're not alone in this fight." Back at the cathedral, Marcus found his sister Rachel sitting in her car in the clearing. She got out when she saw him, her expression a mix of worry and anger. "3 days are up," she said. "I'm bringing the kids back tomorrow whether you're ready or not." Rachel, "No more excuses. Emma is worried sick. Tyler keeps asking if something happened to you. Whatever you're dealing with, they deserve to be with their father." Marcus wanted to argue, but she was right. He couldn't keep hiding them away. He had to figure this out and move forward. "Okay," he said. "Bring them back tomorrow, but I need to tell you something first." They sat in his car, and Marcus told her everything. About the hidden chamber, the artifacts, the threats, all of it. Rachel listened with increasing alarm. "Marcus, this is insane. You need to go to the police right now." "And tell them what? That I found a fortune in religious artifacts and now criminals want to steal them? The police will just seize everything and I'll spend years in legal battles. Better than getting killed." "I'm not going to get killed. I have a plan." "What plan?" Marcus showed her the paper with Father Vincent's contacts. "I'm going to reach out to these people. Do this properly. Return the artifacts to their rightful owners and make sure Father Benedict's sacrifice means something." Rachel stared at him. "And what about the $25 million Sullivan offered? You're just going to walk away from that?" "Yes." "Marcus, that money could change your entire life, Emma's life, Tyler's life." "I know, but it's not mine. And Sarah would never forgive me if I profited from selling sacred artifacts. You know she wouldn't." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Sarah's not here. She doesn't have to worry about you getting hurt or the kids losing another parent. I do." Marcus reached over and took her hand. "I'm going to be careful, I promise, but I have to do this right." She squeezed his hand. "You're an idiot. A noble idiot, but still an idiot." "Yeah, I know." That evening, Marcus made the first phone call to Monsignor Alberto Rossini at the Vatican's Pontifical Commission for Sacred Archaeology and Art. He left a detailed voicemail explaining the situation and asking for guidance. The second call went to Claire Beaumont at Interpol's Works of Art Unit. Again, a voicemail. He explained about the hidden artifacts and asked about proper procedures for reporting found items. The third call was to Helen Torres, an investigative journalist who specialized in art restitution cases. This time someone answered. "Helen Torres speaking." Marcus introduced himself and gave her a quick summary. There was silence on the other end. Then, "Mr. Henry, what you're describing is extraordinary. If verified, this could be one of the most significant artifact discoveries in decades. I need help. People are trying to steal these items, and I don't know how to protect them." "Have you reported this to local authorities?" "Not yet. I'm afraid they'll just seize everything and it'll disappear into bureaucracy." Helen's voice became serious. "Listen to me carefully. You're in danger. People kill for artifacts like this. You need protection and you need documentation. I'm going to come to you. Don't let anyone else into that cathedral until I arrive. I'll be there tomorrow with a photographer and someone from the Smithsonian who can verify authenticity. Can you hold out until then?" "Yes." "Good. Send me the address. And Mr. Henry, Lock your doors and don't trust anyone. Marcus ended the call feeling slightly better. Help was coming. He just had to survive one more night. He spent that night at the cathedral again, sleeping in short bursts, jumping at every sound. Around 2 a.m., he heard vehicles approaching. Multiple vehicles. He grabbed his gun and moved to a window. 3 SUVs, black, just like Sullivan's. They parked in formation and 8 men got out. Not thugs, professionals. They moved with military precision, spreading out around the building. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from Sullivan. Last chance, $25 million or we take what we came for. Marcus typed back with shaking hands. Journalist and federal agents arrive in 6 hours. Take your people and leave. A lie about the federal agents. But maybe it would work. The response came quickly. You're bluffing. Try me. For 5 long minutes, nothing happened. The men stood in the darkness, clearly receiving instructions via radio. Then, one by one, they returned to the vehicles and drove away. Marcus exhaled and slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. His whole body was shaking. They'd back down this time, but they'd be back. He was certain of it. Dawn broke cold and grey. Marcus hadn't slept at all. He sat on the cathedral steps drinking terrible instant coffee from a thermos and watching the road. At 7:30, Rachel's car appeared, followed by a news van and a rental sedan. Emma and Tyler jumped out of Rachel's car and ran to him. He hugged them both so tightly they squeaked in protest. "Dad, you're crushing me," Emma said, but she didn't let go. "I missed you guys." "Missed you too," Tyler said. "Aunt Rachel made us eat vegetables every night. It was terrible." Despite everything, Marcus laughed. Helen Torres got out of the news van with a camera operator and a serious-looking woman in her 50s. From the rental sedan emerged 2 men in suits, one carrying a briefcase. Helen approached with her hand extended. "Mr. Henry, Helen Torres, this is Dr. Margaret Flynn from the Smithsonian and her assistant, and these gentlemen are from Interpol. They took a red-eye when I called them." Marcus shook hands numbly. That was fast. When you tell Interpol you've found hundreds of World War II artifacts, they move quickly. Helen looked at the cathedral. "May we see what you've found?" Marcus looked at Emma and Tyler. "Rachel, can you take the kids into town? Get them breakfast. This might take a while." "Dad, what's going on?" Emma asked. "Why are all these people here?" "I'll explain everything later, I promise. Right now, I need you to go with Aunt Rachel." Emma looked at the journalists and officials, then back at her father. "You found something in there, didn't you? Something big." "Yeah, baby. Something really big." After Rachel drove away with the kids, Marcus led the group into the cathedral. He showed them the hidden door behind the tapestry, the spiral staircase, the bronze hatch. Then he opened it and led them down into Father Benedict's chamber. The reaction was immediate. Dr. Flynn gasped. The Interpol agent stood frozen. Helen Torres's camera operator started filming while she took notes furiously. "My God," Flynn whispered. "It's real. It's all real." She moved to the nearest shelf and carefully examined a golden chalice, pulling out a magnifier to study the maker's marks. "This is from Prague, 16th century. I've seen photographs of it in catalogues from before the war. Everyone assumed it was destroyed." One of the Interpol agents, a Frenchman named Rousseau, was reading Father Benedict's journal. "This is detailed documentation, dates, locations, even names of the people who smuggled items out. This is a historical record as valuable as the artifacts themselves. They spent 4 hours documenting everything. Dr. Flynn identified pieces from Poland, France, Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia. She broke down crying when she found a illuminated manuscript from a monastery in Warsaw. "I thought this was lost forever," she said. "Scholars have been looking for this for decades." Helen interviewed Marcus on camera. He told the whole story, from buying the cathedral for $950 to finding the hidden chamber to the threats from Sullivan and Cole. Helen's eyes got wider with each revelation. "This is going to be international news," she said. "Mr. Henry, you understand your life is about to change completely. I just want these artifacts to go back where they belong. That's going to be complicated. Some of the institutions Father Benedict took these from don't exist anymore. Buildings were destroyed, congregations scattered. Interpol will try to trace ownership, but it could take years." Agent Rousseau joined them. "Mr. Henry, we need to secure this site immediately. I'm calling for additional resources. We'll have agents here by tonight. In the meantime, I need you and your family to go somewhere safe." "Why?" "Because the people trying to steal these artifacts won't stop. Sullivan works for a collector named Victor Koss. Koss is wanted in 6 countries for art theft and has ties to organized crime. If he wants these items, he'll do whatever it takes to get them." Marcus felt cold. "So what do I do?" "We can put you in protective custody temporarily while we secure the artifacts and begin the investigation." "For how long?" Rousseau hesitated. "Weeks, possibly months." "No, my kids have already lost their mother. I'm not disappearing on them." "Then we'll assign protection to you and your family. But Mr. Henry, you need to take this seriously. You've stumbled into something much bigger than you realized." By noon, the cathedral was crawling with federal agents. They'd set up a perimeter, installed proper security systems, and begun the process of cataloging and moving the artifacts to a secure facility. Marcus signed paperwork giving Interpol temporary custody while ownership was determined. Dr. Flynn approached him as he was finishing the last form. "Mr. Henry, I want you to know what you've done here is extraordinary. Father Benedict saved these treasures, but you made sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain. Future generations will be able to see these artifacts because you did the right thing. Will I get in trouble for not reporting this immediately?" She smiled gently. "The lawyers will sort that out, but between you and me, you found hidden artifacts on your own property and reported them within 2 weeks to appropriate authorities. You could have sold them on the black market for millions. Instead, you're trying to return them to their rightful owners. I think you'll be okay." That evening, Marcus sat with Emma and Tyler in Rachel's living room and told them everything. About the hidden chamber, the artifacts, Father Benedict's mission, the threats, all of it. They listened wide-eyed. "So we're not keeping any of it?" Emma asked. "No, it belongs to the churches it was taken from." "But we could have been rich," Tyler said. "Like really rich." "Yeah, we could have." "So why didn't we?" Marcus pulled both kids close. "Because some things are worth more than money. Father Benedict spent his life protecting those artifacts. He believed they mattered, that they represented something important about faith and human creativity. If I'd sold them to some private collector, they'd disappear into a mansion somewhere and nobody would ever see them again. This way, they'll go to museums and churches where people can appreciate them." "Mom would have done the same thing," Emma said quietly. "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "She would have." Tyler looked up at him. "Dad, are we going to be okay, without the money?" Marcus thought about the construction job, the overnight security shifts, the apartment with the eviction notice. Then he thought about Father Benedict, who'd given up everything to do what he believed was right. And he thought about Sarah, who'd always believed that integrity mattered more than comfort. "We're going to be okay," he said. "We might not be rich, but we're going to be okay." And somehow, sitting there with his kids in his arms and knowing he'd done the right thing even though it cost him millions, Marcus finally believed it. They were going to be okay, because they had each other, and they had the knowledge that when faced with an impossible choice, they'd chosen honor over greed, and that was worth more than any amount of money. The news broke on Saturday morning. Helen Torres's article went live at 6 a.m. with the headline, Construction worker discovers $275 million Wii artifact cache hidden beneath abandoned cathedral. By noon, it had been picked up by every major news outlet in the country. By evening, international media was camped outside Rachel's house. Marcus sat on the couch watching CNN show aerial footage of the cathedral while a reporter explained the story. Emma sat beside him, scrolling through her phone with wide eyes. "Dad, you're trending on Twitter. There are like 1 million posts about you." "What are they saying?" "Most people think you're a hero. Some people think you're stupid for not keeping the money. And there's a whole thread of people arguing about whether you legally own the artifacts or not." Marcus rubbed his face. Great. His phone hadn't stopped ringing. Requests for interviews from every major network, morning shows, podcasts, even a few movie producers. Bishop Morrison had called to check on him. Father Vincent had left a voicemail saying he was proud. And mixed in with all of that were threats. Anonymous texts and emails saying he'd made powerful enemies, that he should have taken Sullivan's offer, that he'd regret his choice. Agent Rousseau had assigned 2 marshals to protect the family. They sat in an unmarked car outside Rachel's house, watching for any sign of Victor Koss's people. Rousseau himself called that evening with an update. "We've secured all the artifacts and begun the authentication process. Dr. Flynn estimates it'll take 6 months to properly catalogue everything and determine provenance. After that, we'll work with UNESCO and various governments to return items to their rightful owners." "What about the threats?" Marcus asked. "Am I still in danger?" "Koss has gone quiet, which actually worries me more, but the public attention helps. It's much harder for him to act now that the whole world knows about the artifacts. Still, I'd recommend you maintain security for at least another month." "And the legal stuff? Am I going to be charged with anything?" Rousseau paused. "The U.S. Attorney's Office reviewed your case. Given that you reported the find within 2 weeks and cooperated fully, they've decided not to pursue charges. You're in the clear legally." Marcus felt a weight lift from his chest. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. You did the right thing, Mr. Henry. Not everyone would have." Sunday morning, Marcus woke to find Tyler watching cartoons with one of the marshals. The man, whose name was Derek, was eating cereal and laughing at SpongeBob. "Morning," Derek said. "Your kid's pretty funny. Been telling me about living in a castle." "It's not really a castle," Tyler corrected, "but it's close." Emma came downstairs, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "The reporters are still outside. I counted 9 news vans." "They'll get bored eventually," Marcus said, though he didn't really believe it. Rachel made breakfast while Marcus checked his email. Buried among the interview requests and threatening messages was one that made him stop cold. The subject line read, "Regarding Father Benedict's legacy," and it came from Monsignor Alberto Rossini at the Vatican. "Mr. Henry, I have reviewed the documentation of your discovery with great interest. Father Benedict Thompson was a remarkable man who saved irreplaceable treasures at great personal risk. The Holy Father himself has been briefed on this situation and wishes to express his gratitude for your integrity in reporting these artifacts. We understand you have suffered financially and face ongoing security concerns as a result of your decision. Therefore, the Holy See would like to propose something. We are establishing the Father Benedict Thompson Foundation for the preservation and repatriation of displaced sacred art. We would like you to serve as the Foundation's director. This is a paid position that would allow you to continue the work Father Benedict began. The Foundation will be housed at the restored St. Augustine's Cathedral, which the diocese is prepared to grant to the Foundation in perpetuity. Please call me at your earliest convenience to discuss this proposal. In Christ, Monsignor Alberto Rossini. Marcus read it 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. They wanted him to run a foundation, a real job with a real salary, doing work that actually mattered, and they were giving him the cathedral to do it. He called the number immediately. Rossini answered on the 2nd ring. "Mr. Henry, thank you for calling. I hope my email was clear." I don't understand. Why would you want me to run this foundation? I'm not an art historian or a lawyer or anything qualified. On the contrary, you're exactly qualified. You understand the mission because you lived it. You chose integrity over wealth, which is increasingly rare. And you have a personal connection to the property and to Father Benedict's vision. The foundation needs someone with heart, not just credentials. What would I actually do? Work with museums and churches to facilitate the return of artifacts, research other potential cases of hidden or displaced sacred art, educate the public about preservation. Eventually, turn the cathedral into a center for this work. We'll provide funding, staff, resources. Your job is to be the moral compass to make sure we honor Father Benedict's sacrifice properly. Marcus felt tears forming. How much does it pay? $85,000 annually to start, with benefits and housing allowance. We understand you have children and need stability. $85,000. Marcus had never made more than $38,000 in a year. This would change everything. Emma could stay in her school. Tyler could join the soccer team he'd been begging for. They could have health insurance and a real home. When would this start? Marcus asked, his voice shaking. Immediately, if you accept. We'll handle the legal paperwork for the cathedral transfer and set up the foundation structure. You'd need to relocate back to the property, but we'll provide construction funding to make the cathedral livable. You were an architect, correct? You can design the renovations yourself. Marcus thought about Sarah, about how she'd always believed he should use his architecture degree instead of wasting it on construction work. About how she'd wanted him to do something meaningful with his life. Yes, he said, I accept. The next 3 months were a blur. Marcus moved the kids back to the cathedral property while renovations began. With the foundation's funding, he designed a conversion plan that preserved the sanctuary's historic character while creating livable space in the side chapels and upper floors. Emma got her own room in what had been the choir loft. Tyler's room was in the bell tower, just like he'd wanted. Marcus's office occupied the old vestry, surrounded by Father Benedict's books and papers. The hidden chamber became the foundation's vault and research center. Dr. Flynn led a team of experts who carefully documented every artifact. They discovered pieces even more significant than initially thought. A prayer book that had belonged to a Polish cardinal murdered by the Nazis, a painting by a forgotten Renaissance master, a manuscript containing music composed by a monk in 1324 that scholars had believed was lost forever. One by one, the artifacts began their journey home. The chalice from Prague returned to St. Vitus Cathedral in a ceremony attended by the Czech president. The Warsaw manuscript went to the National Library of Poland. The painting found a place in a museum in Vienna. Each return was covered by international media, and each time Father Benedict's name was mentioned with reverence. Marcus attended as many ceremonies as he could, bringing Emma and Tyler when school allowed. In Prague, an elderly woman approached them after the chalice dedication. She was 93, barely able to walk, but her eyes were fierce. My grandfather was the priest who protected that chalice, she said through a translator. The Nazis came for it in 1942. My grandfather refused to tell them where he hid it. They killed him. For 79 years, my family believed his sacrifice was for nothing, that the chalice was destroyed. But now, because of you, we know it survived. You gave us back not just an object, but proof that my grandfather's courage mattered. She took Marcus's hand in both of hers. Tears ran down her wrinkled cheeks. Thank you. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for caring. Emma, standing beside Marcus, whispered, Dad, she's crying. I know, baby. Did we do that? Did we make her that happy? Yeah, Marcus said, his own throat tight. I guess we did. Back in Pennsylvania, the foundation grew. They hired researchers, conservators, and educators. They created a program for high school students to learn about art preservation. They partnered with museums to create traveling exhibits about Father Benedict's mission. and the importance of protecting cultural heritage. The cathedral itself became a destination. People came from around the world to see where the artifacts had been hidden, to learn Father Benedict's story, to walk the same halls the dedicated priest had walked. Marcus gave tours himself, telling the story to wide-eyed visitors who couldn't believe one man's courage had saved so much. 6 months after the discovery, Interpol held a press conference announcing they'd arrested Victor Koss in Switzerland. He was charged with attempting to acquire stolen artifacts and conspiracy. Sullivan and Dr. Cole were also arrested as accomplices. Agent Rousseau called Marcus with the news. "You can sleep easier now. Koss is going to prison for a long time. Your family is safe." That night, Marcus took Emma and Tyler to Sarah's grave. They hadn't been able to visit much in the past 2 years. The cemetery was 30 miles away, and Marcus had barely had time between jobs. But now they went every Sunday after Mass. "Hey, Sarah," Marcus said, kneeling on the grass beside her headstone. "I brought the kids. We have some news." Emma knelt beside him. "Mom, Dad did something really amazing. He found all this treasure and he gave it back instead of keeping it. Everyone says he's a hero." "And we live in a castle now," Tyler added, sitting cross-legged. "Well, sort of. It's a church, but it's really cool." Marcus touched Sarah's name carved in the granite. "I wish you could see what we're doing. The Foundation is helping return artifacts to places that lost them during the war. The cathedral is beautiful again. The kids are thriving. We're okay, Sarah. We're actually better than okay. I know it took a while, but we made it through." He felt Emma's hand on his shoulder. "Mom would be really proud of you, Dad." "You think so?" "I know so. You chose the hard thing because it was the right thing. That's what she always taught us." Marcus pulled both kids close. They sat together in the fading autumn light, 3 people learning how to be whole again. A year after the discovery, the Foundation hosted its first major event, the grand reopening of St. Augustine's Cathedral as the Father Benedict Thompson Center for Sacred Art Preservation. Dignitaries came from around the world. The Polish ambassador gave a speech. Bishop Morrison said a blessing. Father Vincent, 92 now and frail but determined, cut the ribbon. Marcus stood at the podium in the restored sanctuary and looked out at the crowd of 300 people. The stained glass window behind the altar had been rebuilt, depicting Father Benedict surrounded by the artifacts he'd saved. Light streamed through it in blues and golds, painting everyone in colored shadows. "A year ago," Marcus began, "I was a construction worker barely making rent. I bought this building for $950 because I was desperate. I had no idea what I'd find beneath these floors. Father Benedict Thompson left a gift for the world, but he also left a question. What would we do with it? Would we treat these artifacts as commodities to be sold, or as treasures to be honored? I chose to honor them, and it changed my life." He paused, finding Emma and Tyler in the front row. They were dressed up, Emma in a dress Sarah had bought her years ago that finally fit, Tyler in a suit that made him look impossibly grown up. "But this isn't really my story. It's Father Benedict's. It's about a man who believed some things are worth more than personal gain, who risked everything to protect beauty and faith and human creativity, who trusted that someday someone would find his hidden chamber and do the right thing. I hope I've honored that trust. I hope the work we're doing here makes him proud." The applause was thunderous. Afterward, people lined up to shake Marcus's hand, to thank him, to tell him their own stories of faith and sacrifice. An elderly nun told him about her convent's lost artifacts, asking if the Foundation might help search for them. A young student said Marcus had inspired her to study art preservation. A veteran shook his hand and said, "You remind me why we fought, to protect things like this, things that matter." Late that night, after everyone had gone and the cathedral was quiet, Marcus walked through the restored sanctuary alone. His footsteps echoed off stone the same way they had that first day, but everything was different now. The windows gleamed with new glass. The pews were polished and repaired. Electric lights had been installed to complement the natural light. The space was alive again, serving a purpose. He descended the spiral staircase to the chamber below. It was empty now, except for the desk and Father Benedict's journal, which stayed as part of the permanent exhibit. Marcus sat in the priest's chair and opened the journal to the last page, the one where Benedict had written his final message to whoever found the artifacts. "I hope I did right by you," Marcus said aloud. "I tried. God knows I tried." His phone buzzed. Text from Emma. "Dad, where are you? Tyler wants to show you something." Marcus smiled and climbed back upstairs. Tyler was in the sanctuary, standing beneath the new stained-glass window. "Look, Dad." He pointed up at the image of Father Benedict. They made him look like a superhero, with the glowing and the artifacts all around him. "He was kind of a superhero," Marcus said, "just a quieter kind." "When I grow up," Tyler announced, "I want to be like him, saving important stuff." Emma rolled her eyes. "You change what you want to be every week. Last week you wanted to be an astronaut." "So, I can be an astronaut who saves important stuff in space." Marcus laughed and pulled them both into a hug. "You can be anything you want. That's the whole point of what we're doing here. Father Benedict saved these artifacts so future generations, people like you, could see them and be inspired. So yeah, be an astronaut who saves stuff, or an artist or a teacher or whatever makes you happy. Just remember to choose what's right over what's easy." The following spring, the Foundation received a letter from the Vatican. The Holy Father wanted to meet Marcus personally to thank him for his work. They flew to Rome, all three of them, first plane ride any of them had ever taken. At the Vatican, they were led through halls that made the cathedral look tiny by comparison. Marcus felt completely out of place in his borrowed suit, holding Emma's hand while Tyler gawked at everything. They were shown into a modest room where the Pope sat behind a simple desk. He stood when they entered, smiling warmly. "Mr. Henry, children, welcome. Please sit." They spent 30 minutes talking. The Pope asked about the Foundation's work, about the artifacts they'd returned, about Emma and Tyler's lives. He was funny and kind, and nothing like Marcus had expected. "Your father did something very special," the Pope told the kids. "He had a chance to become rich, but he chose to do good instead. That's the hardest choice, but it's the one that changes the world." "Our mum would have done the same thing," Emma said quietly. "She taught us that being good matters more than having stuff." The Pope nodded. "Your mother was wise, and she would be very proud of all of you." He turned to Marcus. "Father Benedict saved these artifacts with his hands, but you saved them with your heart. By choosing integrity, you proved that his sacrifice wasn't in vain. You've given the world a gift." Before they left, the Pope gave each of them a blessing and a small medal. On one side was Saint Christopher, patron saint of travelers. On the other was Father Benedict's name, newly canonized as a servant of God, the first step toward sainthood. "Remember," the Pope said as they left, "we are all called to protect what is precious. Sometimes that means standing against the whole world. But if we have faith and courage, God walks with us." On the flight home, Tyler fell asleep against Marcus's shoulder. Emma stared out the window at clouds painted gold by sunset. "Dad," she said quietly. "Yeah?" "I've been thinking about Mom a lot lately, about how sick she was at the end and how sad everything got. But now, with the Foundation and the Cathedral and everything we're doing, it feels like we're happy again, like we're allowed to be happy." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "We are allowed, baby. Mom would want us to be happy." "I know, and I think she'd love what we're doing, helping people, protecting important things. It feels like we're part of something bigger than just us." "We are." Emma turned from the window. "Do you miss her?" "Every single day. Me too. But I'm glad we found the cathedral. I'm glad you made the choice you made. Even though we could have been rich, I think this is better. We're doing something that matters." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "You know what, Emma? I think you're right." 2 years after the discovery, the Foundation had facilitated the return of all 517 artifacts to their rightful homes. Churches across Europe held special masses celebrating the return of precious items. Museums created permanent exhibits. UNESCO gave the Foundation an award for cultural preservation. And Father Benedict's story was taught in schools as an example of moral courage. Marcus stood in the cathedral on the anniversary of his first visit, remembering that day he'd climbed down those stairs and found the bronze hatch, remembering the fear, the confusion, the overwhelming weight of the decision ahead. Bishop Morrison joined him, both men looking up at the stained glass window. "Have you ever regretted it?" Morrison asked. "Choosing this path instead of taking Sullivan's money?" Marcus thought about it, thought about the apartment they'd almost lost, the bills he'd barely paid, the fear of not being able to provide for his kids, thought about $25 million and what it could have bought. "No," he said finally, "not once. The money would have made things easier, but this made things meaningful. We're part of something bigger than ourselves. We're protecting beauty and faith and human achievement. My kids are learning that integrity matters more than wealth. How do you put a price on that?" "You can't," Morrison agreed. "Father Benedict would be proud of you." "I hope so." That evening, the Foundation hosted a small dinner for donors and supporters. Marcus gave a short speech, thanking everyone for their belief in the mission. Afterward, as people mingled, Dr. Flynn approached with an elderly man. "Marcus, I want you to meet someone. This is Jacob Muller. His family owned an art gallery in Vienna before the war." Muller shook Marcus's hand with surprising strength for someone who must be 90. "Mr. Henry, my grandfather hid paintings in our gallery's basement when the Nazis came. He died protecting them. For 70 years, my family assumed those paintings were lost, but last month, researching similar cases, we found evidence they might have ended up in Father Benedict's collection." Marcus's heart started beating faster. "Did they?" "We don't know yet. But Dr. Flynn has agreed to search the records. If we find them, if we can prove they were my grandfather's, it would mean everything to our family. It would mean his sacrifice wasn't for nothing." "We'll do everything we can to help," Marcus promised. After Muller left, Dr. Flynn stayed behind. "There are probably dozens of cases like his, families who lost precious things and assumed they were gone forever. The work Father Benedict did, the work you're continuing, it's not just about returning objects. It's about healing wounds that are generations old." "It's bigger than I ever imagined," Marcus admitted. "The best things usually are." 3 years after the discovery, Marcus woke on a Saturday morning to find Tyler making breakfast and Emma doing homework at the kitchen table. They'd settled into a routine. The cathedral was fully renovated, with their living quarters comfortable and warm. Emma was 15 now, confident and thoughtful. Tyler was 11, still goofy but showing signs of his father's determination. "Dad," Tyler called, "can we go hiking today? It's supposed to be nice." "Sure, let me check the schedule." They spent the afternoon hiking the trails that wound through their 5 acres. The property was beautiful now, cleared of overgrowth but left natural. They'd built a small memorial garden near the creek with benches and a statue of Father Benedict. Sitting on one of those benches, watching his kids throw rocks into the water, Marcus thought about the journey that had brought them here. From desperate construction worker to foundation director. From nearly homeless to living in a historic cathedral. From barely surviving to truly thriving. His phone rang. Father Vincent calling from St. Mary's Monastery. "Marcus, my boy, how are you?" "Good, Father. How are you feeling?" Vincent's health had declined over the past year. He was mostly bedridden now, though his mind remained sharp. ready to go home, truth be told. But I wanted to call you first. I've been thinking about Benedict lately, about how he died not knowing if anyone would ever find his treasures, how he had to trust in faith alone. I think about that a lot too. You gave him what he couldn't give himself, closure, proof that his sacrifice mattered. That's a rare gift, Marcus. Don't ever forget the magnitude of what you've done. I couldn't have done it without your guidance. Nonsense. You had the courage already. I just pointed you in the right direction. Vincent paused, breathing labored. Take care of those children. Raise them to be people of integrity, like their mother was, like you are. I will, Father, I promise. God bless you, son. Father Vincent passed away 2 weeks later, peacefully in his sleep. Marcus gave the eulogy at the funeral, talking about how Vincent had helped him navigate the hardest decision of his life, how the old priest had embodied the same courage and faith as Father Benedict, how he'd spent his last years guiding others toward righteousness. They buried Vincent at St. Mary's Monastery beneath a simple stone that read, "Servant of God, friend to all." Marcus brought Emma and Tyler to visit the grave every few months, teaching them that legacy isn't about what you accumulate, but about what you give. 5 years after the discovery, the foundation had grown beyond anything Marcus imagined. They had a staff of 20, satellite offices in 3 countries, and partnerships with major museums worldwide. They'd facilitated the return of over 2,000 additional artifacts, building on Father Benedict's work by researching other cases of displaced sacred art. Marcus was 47 now, some grey in his hair, lines around his eyes from squinting at documents and smiling at donors. Emma was 17, applying to colleges with an interest in art history. Tyler was 13, obsessed with restoration techniques and already talking about joining the foundation when he was older. On the 5th anniversary of finding the chamber, the foundation held a gala. 500 people attended, including ambassadors, church officials, museum directors, and survivors like Jacob Müller, who had indeed found his grandfather's paintings in Father Benedict's collection. Marcus stood at the podium for what felt like the 100th time, but this speech was different. This one was personal. 5 years ago, I was broke, desperate, and barely holding my family together. I bought an abandoned cathedral because I had no other options. What I found beneath those floors wasn't just artifacts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It was a test, a choice between easy wealth and hard integrity, between taking what I could get and doing what was right. He paused, finding Emma and Tyler in the crowd. They were both smiling, both proud. I chose integrity, and it changed everything. Not because I got rich, I didn't, but because I found purpose. I learned that my life could mean something beyond just surviving, that I could build a legacy my children would be proud of, that I could honor my late wife's values and Father Benedict's sacrifice. He held up Father Benedict's silver cross, the one Father Vincent had given him years ago. This belonged to the man who saved all those artifacts. He wore it every day, a reminder of his faith and his mission. Now I wear it, and someday maybe my son or daughter will wear it. Because legacy isn't about money in the bank or possessions we accumulate. It's about the choices we make when no one's watching. It's about standing for something bigger than ourselves. The applause was overwhelming. People stood, some crying, all moved by the journey from desperate single father to guardian of cultural heritage. Afterward, Marcus found himself alone in the sanctuary, the way he often did after big events. He sat in Father Benedict's favorite pew, the one near the window where the priest used to sit and pray. "We did it," Marcus said to the empty room. "We finished what you started. The artifacts are home. The foundation is thriving. Your name is honored. I hope wherever you are, you're at peace, knowing it was all worth it." The evening light through the stained glass painted colors across the floor. In that colored light, Marcus saw Emma and Tyler appear in the doorway. "There you are," Emma said. "We've been looking everywhere." just saying thank you to an old friend." They sat beside him, the three of them quiet in the beautiful space. Finally, Tyler spoke. "Dad, do you think we'll ever do something as important as what you did?" Marcus pulled him close. "You already are. Every day you choose kindness over cruelty, honesty over lies, hard work over shortcuts. You're doing something important. You don't need to find buried treasure to live a meaningful life. You just need to live with integrity." "Like Mom did," Emma added. "Exactly like Mom." They sat together as the light faded, three people who'd survived loss and hardship and come out stronger. Three people who understood that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars but in purpose, in legacy, in the quiet knowledge that they'd made the world a little bit better. Anyone can change their life if they're brave enough to choose what's right over what's easy. Sometimes the greatest treasures aren't what we find, but who we become in the process of protecting them. As the last light disappeared and stars began to appear through the sanctuary windows, Marcus stood and took his children's hands. Together they walked out of the cathedral, not as people running from their past, but as people building their future. A future founded on integrity, sustained by purpose, and enriched by the knowledge that Sarah would be proud. That Father Benedict's sacrifice had meant something. That their lives, all their lives, mattered in ways money could never measure. Because Marcus Henry hadn't just inherited a cathedral, he'd inherited a mission. And in fulfilling it, he'd given his children the greatest gift a parent can give. The example of a life lived with courage, with principle, and with love. The end. Up next, 2 more powerful stories that will move you. Click now to keep discovering with us and hit subscribe if you believe some legacies are meant to be protected.